Hey, my name's Joe, and my dad's a rocket scientist. And in this sort of short episode, we wanted to talk about that crazy Elon Musk guy. So we talk about him, the amazing launch that happened today, and a little bit about some failures. Because Elon was scared it was going to blow up, and my dad sure has been involved in some things that have blown up or gone off course. So listen in. We'll try to get better at this and more frequent. Thank you. See you later. Hey, my name is Joe, and my dad is a rocket scientist. So say hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
So I just sort of wanted to call you on this sort of off time and discuss pretty much the historic thing that happened today in the space community.
That was so cool.
And so, of course, we're talking
SpaceX Falcon Heavy launch.
Yeah, and followed up with the Elon Musk's personal Tesla that he put into, I guess he put it initially into orbit, but it's going to go into one of those Star Trekian, we're going to slingshot around the Earth and send us to Mars eventually kind of thing.
Well, actually, the way I heard it is they're in the orbit around the Earth now, and probably by now they've fired it again to put it in the orbit they want. That is an orbit around the sun, but it's elliptical, it's egg-shaped, so it goes out as far as Mars and then comes back and goes around the Earth. I don't know how far away from Earth. So it's not going to Mars, but it's going to go out as far as Mars.
Okay, but yeah, that is... So tell me, for sort of the layman, the impact of Tesla, neat thing aside, but this Falcon Heavy.
Well, it's now the most powerful launcher in the world. We now have a launcher that's more powerful than the Russian Proton or whatever their biggest launcher is. And this is what you need to put very large satellites in orbit, like monster communication satellites that gives you internet and TV and phone and all that, and for sending folks to Mars to eventually sometime have people on Mars, or at least send them there.
Man.
So it's a big step forward in that way, because we did not have that capability until the Heavy came along.
And I think add to the fact that, so the Heavy, it had the two big boosters on either side, and the one big center one in the middle, and there was, a bunch of little ones associated with each of those. And the two boosters on the side did that super awesome sort of simultaneous self-landing. Is that
Yep,
correct?
Sure did.
And then sorry, go on.
What they really have is their regular rocket, other than this, is the Falcon 9, which means it has 9 engines in it. This one, they strapped 3 of those Falcon 9s together. So now there's 27 engines that all have to fire at the right time in the right sequence and everything. And that's how it goes up. And then, as you say, the 2 that were on the side release at one point and do their maneuver to come back to Cape Canaveral and land. And that was just so cool. And then the center one burns a little bit longer, like half a minute longer. And it gets going too fast to turn around and come back to Cape Canaveral. So they were going to land it on their barge that's out in the Atlantic Ocean, their autonomous barge. And unfortunately, the TV from the barge went away. They were saying that the vibrations of the thing landing really racks the antennas around, so that they weren't surprised that they lost signal. But I've heard that maybe the landing on the barge wasn't successful, but I don't know any more details than that.
But
still, and the 2 on the sides had actually flown before, and they reused them. That's the whole idea of SpaceX, is to be able to reuse the main boosters as a way to lower costs for this stuff, because mainly the engine is the most expensive thing there, and if they can recycle the engines and use them again, that's a real cost savings.
And so the way they used to do things, like with the shuttle, is the 2 boosters on the side and the one big one in the middle eject and just sort of land in the ocean. And they'd go recover them?
I think they would try to recover the boosters.
Okay, so recover them and then...
Not, I don't think they recovered the tank. And actually, sometimes the tank ended up staying in orbit, depending on what the mission was and stuff like that.
And so they would go retrieve the side boosters from the ocean, which, seawater, terribly caustic, and then
well, the whole thing is those don't have engines. Those are solid rockets they're filled with basic, it's not dynamite, but stuff like that. You light it and it just burns all the way through. There's no real engine in there, no turbo pumps blasting liquid oxygen and fuel together. It's just the dynamite in it burning rapidly.
Just one hell of a bottle rocket.
You got it. So there's really, they can recover the shell, the main body, but I don't think they ever used them. Maybe they did, or maybe they just studied them to get data on how well the burns went.
Wow, that is so cool. And so now the plan is, and the reality is, they're able to land those things right where they want to land them, and so shooting them up a second, third, fourth time.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the way they do it is they don't use up all the fuel. They can turn on and turn off the engines because they're liquid fuel, so you can turn them on and off. And so when they break away, there's still some fuel left in it, and they can turn the rocket engines back on as a way to slow down these guys coming back down to Earth. So as long as they've got enough fuel, they can do this.
That is
really neat.
That is too neat. And
I think stoked. I was yelling and screaming at my laptop watching it live. It was great.
And the fact that they have this amazing high-definition video coming from space and coming from live during the launch. And
Yep. They've done that since day one. That's been one of the things SpaceX and Musk have done is they've always had, GoPros or the equivalent all over the place, and you could see stuff going. It's wonderful for getting people to get excited about it and see what really goes on.
So what's their end game, their business model? Is it we just want to provide a cheaper way to get stuff into orbit, or is it sort of more of an altruistic, I want to explore the next great thing by sending stuff to Mars and that sort of thing?
Well, I think they have a business. They launch communication satellites. They launch military satellites, and they get paid to do that. I think that's one of their major goals is to be able to do that in a cost-effective way so they can win more of the contracts to do it, I guess. And then, yes, Elon Musk's stated goal is he wants to get people to Mars. And that, that takes a whole lot more than just having a booster that'll do it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing of the first person or people who go to Mars knowing that it's essentially a death sentence that's nutty.
Yeah. Well, it's a one-way trip, but you got to die somewhere. Why not?
Why not on Mars?
There,
I guess.
That's right.
I guess.
It'll be a adventure no one else will have even had a chance to experience.
Gosh, getting trampled to death by a giraffe is, an experience that not too many people have. I don't think I'm down with that.
Is that your choice of how to go?
No. We're not going to talk about my choice.
Yeah.
That's not appropriate.
Right. That's right.
But okay, so wow, so he launches this, he puts it. So the Tesla, looking at the footage that I've seen, the live stuff of it sort of floating around with the Earth in the background and very beautiful. Obviously, it's mounted on a satellite type of thing.
Well, the way they explained it is this was a test launch. And so you got to have some kind of payload up there that you're going to launch to see how things go, and it's got to be about the right weight and everything that you're thinking of. And so instead of just putting a hunk of lead up there or a bunch of steel, they said, let's be a little creative. And yes, you could see it. There's a tubular structure that the car is mounted on. So it's sort of at an I don't know, 45-degree angle to the direction of motion. But, yeah, they were creative on what the dummy load would be.
Absolutely. So what do you think what do you think his next plan should be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I know one of their plans is to get their Dragon capsule, which is the capsule that they use to take supplies to the space station. They want to get that man-rated so they can then take astronauts to and from the space station. That's one of the things they want to do. That's sort of the short-term goal. I don't know if it's developing Martian habitats that you can send there ahead of time and they automatically, pop into place, sort of like in the movie The Martian. He had that big tent thing he lived in. Well, you send those there ahead of time. Maybe you send supplies there ahead of time, equipment ahead of time, before you even send people to, get that part going. And then when they get there, there's stuff already waiting for them. Maybe that's the next logical step. Or in my mind, the logical step would be to do that at the moon, because it's much closer. You can deal with it a little bit easier and get all your techniques worked out for how you're going to do it on Mars. On the moon, yeah, there's slight differences. Mars has a little bit of an atmosphere and the moon doesn't. And maybe the moon has water Mars has water just under the surface. Maybe the moon does too. But, to get your techniques, your procedures, how you're going to do things worked out just going to the moon and then go to Mars. But then again, Elon Musk thinks way ahead of where I think. He may think that doing stuff at the moon just is a waste of time. Why not just start out doing it at Mars? I have no idea.
So one of the things I thought was interesting is all his tweets and his stuff leading up to it was, this is going to be super cool, but there's a really distinct possibility that this thing's just going to blow up.
Yeah, I think I heard he gave it a 50% chance of working.
Wow. So yeah, failures in the whole sort of space industry. It seems like that there's a high rate of them, or is that just on sort of more the cutting edge stuff where we have deltas and rockets like that are super reliable?
Yeah, but things happen. If you remember, their Falcon 1, which was their first rocket that just had one engine in it, it didn't work, wasn't successful till the fourth try. But they learned more about it on each one of the ones that didn't work. So they had to work the kinks out of it. And, things happen. And until we did the people did landers on Mars, I mean, something like half of all the missions to Mars failed. When you combine the U.S. and the Russian and Japanese and whoever else, the English or ESA, right, European Space Agency, half of them didn't work, or they failed one way or another. So, you learn through the failures and you hope to, at some point, to stop having them.
So, okay, so speaking of failures, any good sort of either satellite rockets, high-altitude balloon failures in your career that you want to sort of mention?
Okay. Just the other day at the National Academy of Science, they had the celebration of the 60th anniversary of the launch of Explorer 1, the first U.S. satellite to make orbit. And that brought to mind, I remember they always had pictures of every launch attempt. And I can remember Vanguard getting about 3 feet off of the ground and then just crumpling in a ball of flame. And you saw this little basketball-sized satellite go bouncing across the tarmac. Oh. And in the early days, things blew up all the time, but I don't know. When we launched the Rossi X-ray Timing Explorer from Cape Canaveral, you were there, or part of it. You remember that. And just a year later, the exact same kind of Delta rocket with the 9 strap-on boosters going out of the same tower blew up at about 2,000 or 3,000 feet. So it's not always a sure thing. You want to do everything you can, and NASA has tons of procedures and stuff like that just to make sure you cover everything you can think of. But so launches have been relatively safe or good recently. The shuttle disasters were not with the booster. Well, the first one was burning through the sides of the solid rocket boosters.
Yeah, that was
and then
the O-ring failure.
Right, the challenge. And then the other one was that at launch, allegedly a hunk of ice went and hit the wing on it and sort of knocked a hole in the protective tiles on it. And then when they were coming back in, it overheated and burned the wing off and all went to heck. So, those are the failures I can think of recently. Our balloon ones are a whole nother story. Those are just fun to talk about.
Okay, give me let's to finish up this sort of quick impromptu one. What's a good balloon failure that you know of?
Well, there are various failures. I mean, UCSD had one that when they were done doing the observations at the balloon's at 130,000 feet, and the scientific instruments are hanging from the parachute, which is hanging from the balloon.
And so where are these balloons normally? Are these launched from where?
Well, that one happened to have been launched from Alice Springs, Australia.
Okay.
Because one of the goals was to look at the galactic center, and you can only see that from the southern hemisphere, not the northern hemisphere. But they launch them out of Palestine, Texas. They launch them at Antarctica to go around the poles. They just had some very long duration balloons they launched from New Zealand that went around the world once and ended up coming down in Peru. Very successful. I forget, 40 some odd days at high altitude, so they could get all sorts of data. But things happen. So here's the UCSD one.
Okay.
And we're done. They send the command to cut the connection between the parachute and the balloon. And when it gets down to about 90,000 feet, there's enough air for the parachute to really open wide. And there's chute shock, the shock of it opening. Well, that broke the connection between the scientific instruments and the parachute. So the scientific instruments free fell from 90,000 feet into the Australian outback.
Okay, that's much better. That's much, dropping it into the middle of the outback, I think it's a lot better than, just in the middle of a city.
Well, there was when they cut it down, the balloon itself gets all tangled up and is a big mass of plastic coming down, and it fell at an angle. It didn't come straight down. It came at an angle and ended up landing in the middle of a street in Birmingham, Alabama. But there were huge storms, thunderstorms and all that. So the road crews who were cleaning the roads just picked it up, threw it in the truck, and didn't say anything about it. And thank goodness it didn't hit a car. It didn't hit a telephone line. It didn't hit anything. So people were really lucky on that one. But
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have to...
Well, okay, one more.
Okay, one more.
One of the UCSD launches from Alice Springs in Australia, they had been having terrible rainstorms, one of the rainiest seasons ever. And so they launched the balloon and did their thing, and the balloon came down back in some farmer's field somewhere. And the balloon crews who go recover it, they carry cash with them, because you might have to knock down a farmer's fence to drive the truck back to get your instrument to put on a truck, and you pay the farmer for his fence. Well, for this one, they had a bulldozer, a D5 Cat bulldozer, making a little road to go back to where the instrument was. And,
so how big are these? I mean, we're talking what size? Like storage shed behind a house size, or minivan size?
Let's see. This one was I'm trying to picture it. It was probably 6 foot by 6 foot by 10 foot high.
Okay. All right.
But most of it is tubular steel support stuff.
Okay.
It's not some big our instrument was in the center of it, and
Yeah.
the instrument itself was probably 3 by 3 by 3 feet.
Okay, so big roll cage with a
Right.
chewy center.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So they're driving the bulldozer back there, and here's a little stream they go over. It turns out the stream was quicksand, and the bulldozer starts to sink in the quicksand.
Uh-oh.
And they're going, uh-oh, we're going to need a bigger bulldozer. So they go get a D9 Cat, a much bigger one, and we're able to pull that one out and not lose it. That would have been really bad. So they got it out, and then they got the truck all the way back to where the instrument was and loaded it. But now they had to bring the truck back out. So they hooked the bulldozer up. In Australia, all the trucks have kangaroo bars on the front of them. It's, a bunch of pipes so that if you hit a kangaroo, you don't ruin your radiator in the front of your car or truck. So they hook onto that and they start pulling it out. And at some point, they rip the kangaroo bars off. So they said, okay, well, they'll hook it on the bumper. And they pulled it out even further, and then the bumper came off. They had it hooked on the chassis, and they figured if that had broken, they'd be in big trouble. But they did get the truck out and all that. But these are all things that happened. UCSD had one where the balloon came down the payload came down into a tree, and it was, 30 feet up in the air. And they said, all right, we'll come back in the morning and get it. Well, they learned the lesson of you better unhook the batteries first, because something arced in it and it burned up hanging in the tree. So that was known as our crispy critter balloon flight.
Oh,
but there's just tons of these stories, whether it's rocket flights or balloon flights.
Oh, well, I look forward to talking about more of those. So, yeah, Elon Musk. Cool cat.
He's great. He is. I'm all for him.
Now, are you in line to get one of his limited edition flamethrowers that he's selling?
I saw that. No, the weeds in our yard aren't that bad yet, so I don't think I'll be getting one of those.
Yeah.
I worry about the people who do get them, but that's a whole nother story.
Hey, I'm just seeing a bunch of people in flame suits running around chasing each other, trying to fry each other, but
yeah, sort of an extreme version of paintball.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, well, Pop, thanks for this sort of impromptu quick talk, and I look forward to talking with you again.
It sounds great. Thanks for calling.
All right, see ya.
See ya.
All right, so special thanks to my dad for doing this on his off night. And, yeah, Elon Musk. What a bro, Wonder if he came to your house, what sort of stuff he'd bring. Would he bring... I don't think he'd bring wine. I think he'd bring something really cool. But, anyways, thanks for listening. See ya.